I took a quiet night shift for money, but I broke one rule that I shouldn't have. They hired me because I did not sleep. I told them that in a half-joke and watched the nurse weigh it like she was deciding if insomnia was a skill. The clip in her hair didn't move, but her eyes flicked to my hands and the coffee cup and the place under my eyes where the skin had been thin for years. "Night shift," she said, voice warm and fast. "Sit, watch, listen, you'll be fine." Fine always sounds better than it turns out to be. The desk they gave me was at the end of a corridor that hummed with the low, steady, wordless breath of machines. Cheap laminated wood, a flat monitor with a dull, gray bezel, a metal drawer that stuck on the way in and stuck harder on the way out. The screen showed a single feed, an isolation room with a bed, a monitor, and a wall of cabinets with mirrored doors that took the place of art. The mirrors made the small room look larger, which fooled no one. A paper was taped to the side of my monitor with blue painter's tape. The rules were printed in a thin, stiff font that carried the weight of forms. Audio must remain on. Eyes on the mirrored surfaces. No rewinds. No visitors after midnight. I let my fingers find the volume wheel at the bottom of the screen and left it all the way up. The audio came through as a layered hush. HVAC, plastic creak, the sigh and beep of the patient's monitor, the impossible soft click of the mirrored doors settling against their frames as the air shifted. The nurse called herself Irene. Her badge said something longer, but Irene suited her better than the formal name printed in smart black letters. She walked me through the schedule, who arrived when, which doors would open and close, what was supposed to be silent and what would scream, and I nodded like I'd been doing this for years. I had done other watches. Security for a warehouse, a parking structure, a windowless museum exhibit where they didn't let me sit. I had not watched a single room like, it was a lake, I had to keep frozen by paying attention. "You'll see things," Irene said as she tucked a pen into the collar of her scrubs. "Humidity on the glass, condensation, reflections that don't make sense because the angles are weird. You'll hear things, too, artifact. The mic picks up a lot. Don't let it get to you." "And if it does," I asked. "Then you let it pass and it won't know your name," she said, and smiled in a way that only reached one side of her face. The bed on the feed held a patient. A man. I did not get his chart. They had me sign a line that said I would not ask for it. He wore a hospital gown the color of oatmeal and lay with his hands slack at his sides, his hair pressed in a perfect halo to the pillow as if someone had wet a comb and made it so. The tape across his IV made a small shadow under the light. The monitors showed the gentle green slopes of breathing and the small tooth of a heartbeat. His chest rose and fell. The rise took longer than the fall. He did not move. He did not blink. But in the mirrored doors of the cabinet that ran along the wall to his right, his reflection did. I noticed that on the second hour of the first night, not all at once. I was doing what they taught me, letting my eyes walk through the space on the screen. Bed, patient, edge of sheet, IV stand, cords curled and tied with a red plastic strip, monitor, the small wound of light where the monitor frame reflected in the mirror, cabinet handle, floor. And then the blink, quick, human, testy in its smallness, of a man's eyes in glass. I leaned forward until the plastic of my chair creaked. The patient's face on the bed remained blank, eyes half-lidded with the wet, open look of sleep. The reflection in the cabinet door had eyes that closed, hid their own wet, opened again. The motion was as small as a swallow. Too fast to catch unless you were looking, maybe too fast to catch unless you were not looking away. I did not say anything about it on night one. I told myself the angle was strange, that mirrors can be a lens and a lie. I kept my eyes on the mirrored surfaces like the paper demanded. My attention moved between glass and patient and glass again until the edges of my eyes felt raw. It should have made me more tired. It did not. The watch held me the way a good book used to hold me, back when books still held me. Around 2, when the hall outside the door fell into the kind of quiet that makes even wheels tired of rolling, I heard the whisper. It was not a whisper in the sense of intimacy. It was a second texture under the hospital's white noise. A dry, breath-like sound like someone speaking into a pillow. Some syllables were clear, but most of it was suggestion. And either because I was lonely or because I had practiced, I listened to suggestion like it was content, and the whisper grew teeth. It said my name. Not the one on the application. Not the one Irene had called me when she handed me the badge that said temp with the kind of laminate that corners like to peel. It used the shortened one, the one close friends said when they wanted me to come back from where I had gone in my head. The whisper said it the way you might say, come here, not because you needed help, but because you wanted one true thing in the room with you. Artifact, I said out loud to hear if my voice had a tremble in it. It did. The newness of it surprised me. I hadn't heard that weakness in myself in a while. The whisper moved under the sound of the HVAC like a fish shadow under a dock. I turned the volume down and up again, and the whisper did not change. I put my hand around the small plastic speaker, the way I had once cupped my hand around a candle flame to keep the wind off, and the whisper moved through my fingers and into the bone of my hand. Irene checked on me at 3. Her steps announced her before I saw her. The corridor held on to footsteps and let them go like it confirmed the existence of each person who worked there. She leaned on the desk, eyes on the screen. "How's your first night?" she asked. "Fine," I said. I tilted the monitor toward her as if the change in angle would make it more true. She nodded at the paper with the rules. "You're leaving the audio on." "Yes." "Good," she said it like a word she had placed on the desk between us. "It's important." Because I didn't ask it like a challenge. I asked with the same tone I used when a recipe told me to wait half an hour before cutting, and I wanted to know why the half hour mattered. Because behavior follows attention, she paused, because sometimes sound holds a door closed. She watched the screen for a long breath. "It gets easier when you know what you're hearing," she said, and put a paper cup with water next to my coffee like she was giving me a choice. I took the water. My mouth was dry. The whisper did not want the water. The whisper wanted me to put my ear to the monitor. I did not. Irene left, and the light of the corridor thinned until it was only a stripe under the door, and the stripe under the door became a bar my eyes could hook onto when the mirrored doors filled the screen and waited for me to blink. By dawn, when the monitor's black bezel picked up the color of the light coming into the building, I had convinced myself of the story that would allow me to come back the next night. The story was that reflections lie, but they lie consistently. The patient's blink in the mirror was a trick of angle and timing. The whisper was airflow in a duct that my brain could not parse. Fatigue had sharpened certain edges and made others soft. "Good first shift," Irene said when she took her place at the desk. "If you want to keep it, we can pay you a little more than minimum," she added in the same clipped, kind tone she used for everything, including telling me which bathroom to use and where the fire exits were. I nodded. The truth was that the pay was not my first concern. The truth was that I did not want to go home, where the shadows fell only where they fell, and I had to put the bed in the right place to get even a little quiet. The truth was I was better at watching than sleeping. When she left, I watched the screen even with the lights up, as if the mirrors could still hide something in full day. On the second night, the whisper did not wait until 2. It threaded itself under the machine hum at 1, later again at 1:30, and in the small slice near 2 that felt like a pause in the world's breath, it said something else in the same voice that knew my name. It answered a question I had not asked out loud. I had spent the minutes between 1 and 2 rehearsing ways to talk to Irene about the blinking. I had made a list, which I did not write down, because writing it down would have made it more real, and I was still pretending I could unknow it if I wanted. I thought the first thing I would say would be that the mirrors made me feel like I needed a second set of eyelids to keep up. Instead, what I had been repeating in my head, for reasons I could not name, was a question so small it belonged to a child. "Are you alone?" The whisper said no. I stopped breathing for long enough that my chest hurt. The monitor kept on drawing green mountains and valleys to prove the patient breathed. I leaned in so close. I felt the heat the screen spent from the work of being a screen. "No," the whisper said again, as if it liked correcting me. "Your artifact," I told it, The word felt thin, like a paper coin. Later that night, I told Irene about the whisper. I did not tell her it knew my name. I did not tell her that it had taken a word out of my head and made it a form in the room that I could touch with my fear. Artifact, she said, and touched the rules sheet like a talisman. All systems produce ghost signals. If you don't feed them, they go quiet. Feed them, I asked. Attention, she said. We're in the attention business here. Try not to make stories out of every little thing. She hesitated, then added, you'll get a pay increase if you log a week without touching the controls. I haven't touched them, I said. I had turned the volume down for a second the previous night. I ignored that memory like it wasn't mine to ignore. I nodded as if my hands had never seen the jog wheel and the play-pause button and the rewind arrows. Good, she said. Holler if anyone shows up after midnight. They know the rules, but sometimes people test them. Her eyes brushed the screen. You can tell them through the intercom if they try. You sit right where you are. You don't get up. I told her I would do that. I meant it when I said it. I meant it until night 4. On night 4, the whisper sounded like an exhale through a wet straw, and for a moment it had a shape that suggested a mouth. It formed a sound like a word that could have been any of 5 common words. It had a sound like want. I thought it said water. I brought the paper cup to my lips, and it felt wrong to swallow while the patient did not. I set it down again and watched the mirrored doors catch the thin white of the fluorescent light. The mirrored doors held the room like a second room that could not be walked into. My job was to keep it so. When my eyes started to burn, I tried to breathe with the patient's green line. Up, down, up, down. On the screen, his reflection in the mirrored door blinked again, blinked twice. I set my coffee down and felt the table give a small sing as porcelain met laminate. Stop, I said to no one, to myself, to the part of me that wanted to turn the volume knob all the way to 0 and see what silence felt like. I lasted 12 minutes. During those 12 minutes, I counted 4 more blinks in the mirrored cabinet. I counted them, soft, under my breath. I made small marks with my fingernail in the top layer of the desk where no one would notice. I tried to keep track of the pattern. There wasn't one. That was the pattern. At 12 minutes and 1 second, I pinched the knob between thumb and forefinger and moved it left. The audio dropped out of the room in a flat way, as if someone had